Welcome to Hidden Truths, where we pull back the curtain on the systems, the rules, and the illusions that shape your life. Here, nothing is taken at face value. We dig into the hidden forces controlling your money, your freedom, and even your choices, forces you were never meant to question. If you've ever felt that something about the world doesn't add up, you're in the right place. You think you own your home, your car, your phone. You believe that because you worked for it, because you paid for it, it's yours. But what if ownership is just a story you've been sold? A story that can vanish the moment you step out of line. Today, we're going to expose the uncomfortable truth. In the modern world, you don't truly own anything. And if you can't own the things in your life, it's time to ask the deeper question: who really owns you? The illusion of ownership, the comfortable lie. You've been told a simple story your entire life. Work hard, save your money, buy the things you want, and one day you will own them. Own your home, own your car, own your life. It's a beautiful story, neat, reassuring, and deeply comforting. It's the promise that if you play by the rules, you'll one day reach a point where you are untouchable, where no one can take away what is yours. And so you chase it. You study, you work long hours, you save, you sacrifice, you delay your dreams, all for that magical moment when the keys, the deeds, and the titles have your name on them. But here's the question no one ever taught you to ask. What does own actually mean? If owning something means you have complete, unquestionable control over it, then you may already suspect the truth. Because the moment you look closely, you realize your ownership is surrounded by invisible conditions, limits, and strings. Take your home, the ultimate prize in the modern dream. The day you sign the papers, there's a rush of pride. You finally have it. Friends congratulate you. Your family calls you a homeowner. You decorate it, you invest in it, you build memories inside its walls. But you quickly learn that the moment you stop paying property taxes, yes, even after the mortgage is gone, you can lose it. Miss a tax payment, and the government has the legal right to take your home, auction it off, and give you whatever scraps are left after fees. And they can do this without caring how long you've lived there, how much you've invested, or how many birthdays your children celebrated in that living room. Or think about eminent domain, the legal power for governments to seize private property for public use. All it takes is a decision that your neighborhood is the perfect location for a new road, a shopping mall, or a government facility. You may receive compensation, but you have no power to refuse. Your choice isn't part of the process. Your car? That shiny machine in your driveway with your name on the registration? You might think you can do whatever you want with it, but try driving it without paying for insurance, without passing inspection, or without paying the renewal fee for your plates, and see how quickly that illusion disappears. In some countries, law enforcement can even disable your vehicle remotely if it's connected to certain onboard systems. Your phone? That device you paid for in full? You don't truly own the software that makes it work. In fact, you've only been given a license to use it on their terms. That's why a company can push updates you don't want, remove features you liked, or even remotely disable your own device. They can lock you out of your own device because in the fine print, you agreed to conditions that allow them to do so. And if this seems like a modern problem, something caused by technology, it isn't. The illusion of ownership has existed for centuries. In medieval times, kings granted ownership of land to nobles, but it was never truly theirs. The crown could take it back at any time. In colonial times, governments handed out land titles to settlers, but native populations learned the hard way that these titles could be rewritten or invalidated overnight. The modern twist is that today's systems are more subtle. You don't notice the chains because they're hidden in paperwork, embedded in legal codes, buried in terms and conditions that nobody reads. They don't tell you, you don't own this. Instead, they let you feel like you do, until the moment they decide you don't. Why is this illusion so powerful? Because it's emotional. We attach pieces of ourselves to the things we believe we own. Your home is part of your identity. Your car represents your freedom. Your phone is your connection to the world. To lose them isn't just a financial hit. It feels like losing a part of who you are. That's why this system works so well. It makes you protective, compliant, and willing to follow the rules set by those who actually hold control. Most people never notice. They live their lives convinced they're in control, until the moment a letter arrives, a lock appears, or a password stops working. Then, in a single moment, the mask slips, and they realize they never truly owned what they thought was theirs. The real definition of ownership, the one they don't want you to think about, is this: if you can't use it without permission, change it without asking, keep it without paying, or pass it on without interference, you don't own it. You are borrowing it. You are leasing it. You are holding it at the pleasure of someone else. And here's the hardest truth to face. When you don't fully own the things in your life, it's not just the things that are under someone else's control. It's you. In the chapters ahead, we're going to strip away this illusion piece by piece. We'll look at the laws, the systems, and the technologies that have transformed ownership into a cleverly disguised rental. And we'll ask the question that most people are too afraid to consider. If you don't own anything, who really owns you? The legal trap: how laws define and limit your property. If ownership is supposed to be absolute control, then the law is the set of invisible walls around it. You may think that once your name is on a title, a deed, or a bill of sale, the law is there to protect your rights. But in reality, the law is what defines and limits those rights. Without the legal system, ownership is just possession. And with the legal system, ownership becomes a privilege granted under conditions you do not write. Most people believe the law exists to protect them from losing their property. But the law is also the very thing that can take it away. And because the law is written by those in power, it will always be tilted to serve their interests before yours. Consider this: every country has a concept of property rights, but none of them give you unconditional authority over what you own. There are always clauses, exceptions, and fine print. Some of these are easy to accept, laws that prevent you from using your property to harm others, but others are more revealing because they quietly place your property under the control of the state or corporations. Take eminent domain, for example. This legal power exists in many countries, allowing the government to seize private property for public use. The definition of public use is flexible. It can mean building a highway, a school, a military base, or even selling the land to a private developer who promises to bring in jobs. In theory, you are compensated. In practice, you often have no choice but to give up your land, no matter your history with it, no matter your emotional connection. Property taxes work the same way. They are not just a fee, they are a form of perpetual rent you pay to the government. Failed to pay, and the government can take your property, auction it off, and keep the proceeds. Even if your home has been in your family for generations, the law makes it clear you are only the legal occupant for as long as you keep paying. Then there are zoning laws, rules about how your property can be used. Buy a piece of land thinking you can build a workshop or a small farm? A zoning change can make your plan illegal overnight. In some cases, even planting the wrong kind of crops or keeping animals without permission can result in fines or forced removal. And let's not forget civil forfeiture, a legal process in some countries where law enforcement can seize property they suspect is connected to criminal activity, not prove, suspect. You may never be charged with a crime, yet you can lose your car, your cash, even your home, and face a long, expensive battle to get them back. The trap works because it is disguised as protection. Laws are sold to the public as safeguards against crime, against chaos, against injustice. But every safeguard is also a gate, and every gate has a gatekeeper. And if the gatekeeper decides you no longer deserve entry, your rights evaporate. Corporations have learned to play this game as well. Through licensing agreements, patents, and terms of service, they use the law to retain control over products you buy. You might think you own that expensive piece of software, but legally, you are only licensed to use it, and that license can be revoked at any time. The most dangerous part of this legal trap is how quietly it operates. The conditions are hidden in dense contracts no one reads, in government codes most citizens never study, in court precedents that are never reported on the news. You never know the walls are there until you try to step beyond them. History shows us that these legal traps are not accidental. They are the result of centuries of refinement, each generation of lawmakers adding new conditions, new clauses, new powers that favor those already in control. The laws may look different across countries and eras, but the purpose remains the same: to ensure that ownership is never absolute and that the real authority always rests elsewhere. So the next time you hold a title deed, a car registration, or a bill of sale in their hand, remember this: the piece of paper does not give you power. It records the conditions under which you are allowed to keep what you have, and those conditions can change. In the grand illusion of ownership, the law is both the stage and the script. You may think you're the main character, but in truth, you're just playing a role written for you. The question is, how long will you keep performing before you realize you're not the one holding the pen? The mortgage myth is that you don't own your home. For most people, buying a home is the single biggest financial decision they will ever make. It is sold as the ultimate symbol of success, stability, and adulthood. The day you sign the mortgage papers, you feel as if you've crossed a threshold, that you've moved from renting someone else's property to finally owning your own. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When you buy a house with a mortgage, you are not the owner, you are the occupant. The bank is the owner. And until the day you make your very last payment, plus interest, the house is legally theirs, not yours. Yes, your name might be on the deed. Yes, you might be listed as the homeowner in official records, but the mortgage contract is a claim against your property, and that claim means the lender holds ultimate power. If you miss too many payments, they can take the house away, no matter how much you've already paid toward it. And here's the part most people overlook. Even if you pay off your mortgage completely, you still don't truly own your home. Why? Because you must continue paying property taxes for as long as you live there. In this way, your ownership is really a form of perpetual rent to the government. Fail to pay, and they can seize your property and sell it, regardless of your history with it. Imagine working for 30 years to pay off your mortgage, celebrating the last payment with a bottle of champagne, feeling the weight of debt lift off your shoulders, only to lose the house a few years later because you couldn't keep up with rising property taxes. This happens more often than you think, especially to retirees living on fixed incomes. And taxes aren't the only threat. Governments have the legal power to take your home through eminent domain, claiming it for public use. Sometimes public use means building roads or schools. Other times it means selling the land to private developers who promise economic growth. Your consent isn't required. Your connection to the home doesn't matter. Then there are zoning changes and building codes. If your area is rezoned, your property could suddenly be in violation of new rules, forcing you to make costly modifications or even prohibiting you from using it in the way you intended. For example, a homeowner with a thriving small farm on their land could be forced to stop
because the local government decided the area should be residential only. And don't forget about homeowners associations if you live in one. These private governing bodies can dictate what color you paint your house, what kind of fence you install, even whether you can hang laundry outside. Fail to comply and they can fine you, or in extreme cases, take legal action to force the sale of your property. All of these forces, banks, governments, associations, are layers of control between you and the thing you think you own. They can dictate what you do with your home, how you maintain it, and whether you keep it at all. The mortgage myth works because it taps into our deepest desires, to have a place that is ours, a safe haven where we can live without fear of being displaced. But the truth is, your home is only secure as long as you keep meeting the conditions others have set for you. And those conditions can change. Interest rates can rise, taxes can go up, laws can shift, fees can appear. You may think you've bought freedom, but what you've really bought is a long-term contract of compliance. Some people try to escape this trap by buying property in cash. And yes, doing so removes the bank from the equation, but it does not remove the government's power over your property. It does not remove the zoning laws. It does not remove the possibility of seizure. Even without a mortgage, you are still paying rent to the system. So the next time you hear someone say, "I own my home," understand what they really mean is, I have the right to keep living here as long as I keep paying and keep obeying. That's not ownership, it's conditional permission. In the end, the mortgage myth is not just about debt, it's about control. Because when the place you live, the place where your family sleeps, where your memories are made, is always at risk of being taken from you, you will do almost anything to keep it. And that's exactly how the system wants it.
Vehicles, the illusion on wheels. For many people, a vehicle is more than just a means of transportation. It's a symbol of freedom. The moment you get your driver's license and your first set of keys, it feels like the world has opened up to you. Roads stretch endlessly, possibilities feel limitless. You tell yourself, this is mine, I can go anywhere I want. But that sense of freedom is carefully managed and heavily conditioned. Because just like your home, your car isn't truly yours. From the very beginning, ownership is tied to registration. You can't legally operate your car without it being registered with the government. That registration must be renewed, usually every year or two. Miss the renewal, and your car can be ticketed, towed, or even impounded. You might have paid for the car in full, but if the paperwork expires, the state can take it away. Insurance is another mandatory condition. In most countries, driving without insurance is illegal. And while this is presented as a safety measure, it's also a tool of control. Fail to pay your premiums or let your coverage lapse, and you may lose the legal right to drive your own vehicle. Then there are inspections. In many places, your vehicle must pass regular safety or emissions checks to remain road legal. Fail an inspection, maybe your brakes are worn, maybe your exhaust system isn't up to code, and you could be banned from driving until repairs are made, regardless of whether you can afford them. And these are just the rules for keeping your car on the road. Modern vehicles introduce a whole new layer of control: software. Today's cars are computers on wheels, and the companies that make them often retain ownership of that software. That means they can update, limit, or even disable certain features remotely. Consider the rise of features as a service. Some car manufacturers now lock heated seats, advanced driving modes, or navigation systems behind monthly subscription fees. You might have all the hardware installed, but without paying the ongoing fee, you're not allowed to use it. It's the ultimate reminder: you bought access, not ownership. In extreme cases, the control is even more direct. If you finance your vehicle and miss payments, some lenders can activate remote kill switches, devices installed in your car that prevent it from starting until you pay. They can also track your location in real time, making repossession quick and easy. And it's not just lenders. Some automakers have the ability to disable or lock vehicles if they suspect misuse or if certain terms of service are violated.
The physical key in your pocket means nothing if the digital locks say otherwise. Even when you've paid for your vehicle in full and met all legal requirements, you're still bound by rules about where, when, and how you can drive. Drive without a valid license? Illegal. Drive in certain restricted areas? Prohibited. Park in the wrong spot? Your car can be towed and held until you pay a fine. Your so-called freedom is constantly fenced in by regulations, fees, and penalties. And like with homes, vehicles are subject to seizure under certain laws. Civil asset forfeiture allows police, in some jurisdictions, to take your car if they suspect it's connected to illegal activity. You don't have to be convicted or even charged to lose it. Getting it back often involves navigating a costly and time-consuming legal process. The illusion works because vehicles give such a powerful emotional payoff. You feel independent, in control, and mobile. You can go where you want, when you want, until the moment you can't. Until you realize that every mile you drive is under a web of permissions, and those permissions can be revoked. We've been taught to equate the possession of keys with ownership. But keys, especially in the digital age, are no longer symbols of control. They're more like access passes, valid only as long as you play by the rules of someone else's game. Your vehicle feels like an extension of your life. You maintain it, upgrade it, personalize it, but no matter how much you love it, it exists within a system designed to remind you you are not completely in charge. The real question is, if you don't have unconditional control over the thing that moves you from place to place, are you truly free to move at all?
Digital slavery. Why you don't own your tech. Not long ago, buying something meant it was yours, completely, physically, and permanently. You could hold it, use it, modify it, resell it, or pass it down to someone else. But in the digital age, that definition of ownership has been quietly rewritten. Today, when you buy technology, whether it's a phone, a laptop, an e-book, a piece of software, or even a video game, you're often not buying the product itself. You're buying a license to use it under specific terms set by the seller, and those terms can change at any time. This shift is subtle but profound. In the past, if you bought a book, it was yours forever. You could lend it, sell it, underline it, or tear it apart if you wanted. Now, when you buy an e-book, you don't actually own the file. You're granted access to it. The seller can remove it from your device, restrict your ability to share it, or block your account entirely. One of the most famous examples happened in 2009 when Amazon remotely deleted copies of George Orwell's 1984 from customers' Kindle devices. Think about that for a moment. People had paid for those books, downloaded them, and thought they owned them. But with one command, Amazon reached into their devices and took them back. The same is true for software. You might spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a program, but in most cases, you don't own the software. You own a license to use it. If the company changes its terms of service, shuts down its servers, or decides you violated its rules, they can cut off your access. Even physical devices are not immune. Modern tractors, for example, are full of software. Farmers who buy them often discover they can't repair their own machines because the manufacturer locks the system. Only authorized dealers using proprietary tools can make certain fixes. This has sparked a global right-to-repair movement, as consumers realize that the products they've paid for are in effect rented. Video games are another area where ownership has eroded. When you, quote, buy a game digitally, you usually don't own the game itself, you own a license that can be revoked. If the platform you bought it from shuts down, or if your account is banned, your library can disappear overnight. Even physical game discs now often require online activation, meaning the disc alone isn't enough to play. And then there's the rise of digital rights management, or DRM,
technologies that control what you can do with digital content. DRM can stop you from copying a song, moving a video to another device, or even playing something without an internet connection. It's a constant reminder that you're not in full control. The problem isn't just about losing access, it's about dependence. Digital products often require constant connection to the company's servers. That means your use of something you paid for depends on the company continuing to operate, continuing to allow your access, and continuing to support your device. If any of those conditions change, your ownership vanishes. Worse still, many companies can, and do, collect data from the devices you've bought. Your phone, your smart TV, your gaming console. They're often tracking what you do, when you do it, and sometimes even where you are. In effect, you've paid for the privilege of carrying a surveillance device in your pocket or living room. The truth is that digital technology has shifted the balance of power. In the physical world, ownership gave you control. In the digital world, the seller retains control long after you've paid. They can change the product remotely, lock you out, or decide the rules under which you're allowed to use it. And just like with homes and vehicles, this system is designed to feel normal. You don't question it, until the day a feature disappears, a subscription price rises, or an app you loved is suddenly unavailable. That's when the illusion cracks, and you realize you were never the real owner. We call this progress. We celebrate the convenience, the instant access, the ability to carry thousands of books, movies, and songs in our pockets. But convenience comes at a price: control. And in the digital age, the person with control is the person who truly owns the thing. So the next time you click Buy Now for a piece of technology, ask yourself, am I buying it or am I borrowing it under someone else's conditions? Because if you can't keep it, change it, or use it without permission, you're not the owner, you're the user. And users can be disconnected at any time.
The platform economy. Buying access, not things. In the past, commerce was simple. You paid for something and it was yours. The transaction ended there. No one could take it back, change the terms, or decide later how you could use it. But in the 21st century, a new model has quietly taken over, one that replaces ownership with access. Welcome to the platform economy, where you no longer buy the thing, you buy the right to use it for as long as the platform allows you to. It's everywhere. Movies, music, books, software, even tools and household goods. You used to buy a DVD. Now you subscribe to Netflix. You used to buy a music album. Now you subscribe to Spotify. You used to buy software once and use it for years. Now you pay Adobe every month for Photoshop or Microsoft for Office. The shift is so complete that younger generations are growing up without even experiencing the idea of permanent ownership. The platform economy works because it feels affordable. Why pay $100 for a software license when you can pay $10 a month? Why buy every song you like when you can stream millions for the price of a coffee? It's sold as flexibility, convenience, and freedom of choice. But what you're actually buying is dependency. When you depend on a platform, you're at the mercy of its rules, prices, and decisions. A platform can remove a movie from its library, and you have no say. A music service can take down an artist's entire catalog, and you lose access instantly. A software company can double its subscription fee overnight, and your only options are to pay or lose the tools you rely on. And unlike physical ownership, where you could keep an older version of something, platforms are designed to control the entire environment. You can't roll back an update, you can't store a permanent copy, and you can't keep access if your account is closed. Everything flows through their servers, and they decide what passes through the gates.
Even more unsettling is the fact that in many cases, platforms are not just controlling content, they're controlling markets. A single platform can become the primary gateway for an entire industry. Think about Amazon for books, YouTube for video, or Airbnb for short-term rentals. Once a platform dominates, it can shape the rules for everyone, including the people who create the products or services. This centralization gives platforms extraordinary power over your access to goods, services, and even information. They can ban accounts without explanation. They can change terms of service in ways that retroactively affect what you've already paid for. And because so much of modern life runs through platforms, losing access can feel like being shut out of the world. The danger here isn't just losing one movie or one app. It's the erosion of personal autonomy. In a world dominated by platforms, you don't own the tools you work with, the media you consume, or sometimes even the data you produce. You're a tenant in a digital space controlled by someone else. Some people argue that platforms have made life easier, and in many ways they have. But convenience always comes at a cost. And in the platform economy, the cost is control. You don't control the servers. You don't control the rules. You don't control the lifespan of the things you use. And yet we've accepted this as normal because it's everywhere. We've traded permanence for convenience, control for flexibility, ownership for access. The shift happened so gradually that most people didn't notice. Now it's the default way of interacting with the world. But here's the thing. When you own something, it's yours until you choose otherwise. When you rent something from a platform, it's yours until they choose otherwise. That difference is everything. So the next time you click subscribe, ask yourself, am I getting more freedom? Or am I just paying for a key to a door that someone else can lock at any time? Because in the platform economy, the person who owns the door owns the world behind it, and you're just passing through.
Intellectual property, owning ideas but not objects. When you buy something physical, you might think the story ends there. You own it, and that's the end of the relationship. But in many cases, what you're really buying is a physical object wrapped in someone else's legal rights. And those rights, called intellectual property, mean that while you may hold the object in your hands, you don't have full control over what you can do with it. Intellectual property laws, patents, copyrights, trademarks, exist to protect creators and innovators. In theory, they ensure that the people who invent something, write something, or design something are rewarded for their work. But in practice, they are often used to limit what you, the buyer, can do with the thing you've paid for. Take farming as an example. For thousands of years, farmers saved seeds from their harvest to plant the next season. But today, many seeds are genetically modified and patented by corporations. If a farmer buys those seeds, grows crops, and then saves some seeds to replant next year, they may be breaking the law. The corporation owns the genetic code inside the seed. The farmer may own the plant, but not the ability to reuse it without paying again. Or consider the case of John Deere tractors. Farmers buy these machines outright, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. But because the tractors run on proprietary software, John Deere claims the farmers don't have the legal right to repair them on their own. They must go through authorized dealers, often at much higher costs. It's like buying a car, but being told you can't change the oil without permission. The same is true for many electronics. A phone or laptop may be yours in a physical sense, but the operating system, firmware, and design elements are protected by intellectual property laws. That means modifying, reselling, or even using the device in certain ways can violate the manufacturer's rights. Even printed books are subject to these limitations. While you can resell a physical book,
You can't legally copy its content and distribute it. And in the digital realm, restrictions are even tighter. Most ebooks are licensed, not sold, meaning you can't resell them at all. On the surface, these restrictions might seem reasonable. After all, creators deserve to be paid for their work. But the problem arises when intellectual property rights are used not to protect creativity, but to control customers indefinitely. If you can't fix, modify, or reuse something you've bought, then your ownership is just a formality. What makes this particularly dangerous is how invisible it is. When you buy a tractor, a phone, or a piece of software, you're not thinking about the legal code that surrounds it. You're thinking about how you'll use it. But hidden in the fine print, there are entire lists of things you are not allowed to do. And if you try, you could face lawsuits, account bans, or other penalties. This isn't limited to agriculture or technology. It happens in fashion, automotive design, even furniture. Some companies design products that cannot be repaired or modified without special tools, and those tools are protected by intellectual property law. In effect, they create a legal moat around their product, ensuring you always have to come back to them. And because these restrictions are backed by the law, breaking them isn't just a matter of voiding your warranty, it can be a crime. That's the real power of intellectual property. It transforms ownership into a long-term lease enforced by governments. When you step back, you begin to see the pattern. Intellectual property laws, originally meant to protect ideas, are now used to control objects you've already paid for. You think you own them, but the most important parts, the parts that make them work, are locked away. So the next time you buy something, ask yourself, do I own this, or am I just holding it for the person who really does? Because if someone else gets to decide how you use it, repair it, or resell it, the answer is clear. You're not the owner. You're the custodian of someone else's property, paying for the privilege to look after it. Financial systems, the silent controllers. Money is supposed to be the purest form of ownership. It's the universal medium. You can exchange it for anything. Unlike a house or a car, money isn't tied to a single use or location. It's portable, flexible, and immediate. If you own it, you own the power to choose. At least, that's what we're taught to believe. In reality, modern money exists almost entirely inside a system of control. A system where your money isn't really yours once it enters a bank. You may think your account balance represents a pile of cash sitting somewhere with your name on it, but banks don't hold your money waiting for you to collect it. They use it, they invest it, they lend it out. And legally, when you deposit money into a bank, you're not storing it, you're lending it to the bank. That means you've given up direct possession of your money in exchange for a promise. The bank promises it will give it back to you when you ask for it. And like any promise, it's only as good as the system that enforces it. History is full of moments when that promise has been broken. In times of crisis, economic collapse, political instability, even sudden regulatory changes, governments have frozen bank accounts, limited withdrawals, or outright confiscated deposits. In Cyprus in 2013, for example, a financial crisis led to the government taking a percentage of large deposits to stabilize the banking system. In Argentina in 2001, the government limited how much people could withdraw from their own accounts each week, sparking massive protests. These events aren't anomalies. They're proof of a principle. If your money is inside the system controls it. And it's not just governments. Banks themselves can freeze your account if they suspect suspicious activity. The definition of suspicious is broad and often automated, sometimes as simple as making an unusually large transfer, sending money to a certain country, or having your name resemble someone on a watch list. Once your account is frozen, your ability to pay bills, buy food, or access cash can vanish overnight. Then there's the slow erosion of financial privacy. Every major transaction is recorded, analyzed, and stored. Your spending patterns are tracked by banks, credit card companies, and sometimes shared with governments or sold to advertisers. The picture of your financial life isn't yours to keep. It's part of a data profile you don't control. Digital payment platforms, while convenient, add another layer of dependence. Services like PayPal, Venmo, and certain mobile wallets can shut down your account instantly, holding your funds for months or indefinitely if they claim you violated their terms of service. And remember, those terms can change at any time. The rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, could take this control to an entirely new level. Unlike cash, which you can hold in your hand and spend without permission, digital currency issued directly by a central bank could be programmed to work or not work based on rules set by the issuer. Imagine a future where your money expires after a certain date, can only be spent on approved items, or is blocked entirely if your social credit score is too low. The most unsettling part? Most people have no backup plan. We're taught to keep our money inside the system for safety, but that safety is conditional. The moment the system changes the rules, your access can disappear. Yes, keeping large amounts of physical cash has risks: loss, theft, inflation. But keeping all your wealth inside the digital financial system has its own risk. The risk of waking up one morning to find that your money still exists, you just can't touch it. The illusion is subtle. Your account balance looks stable on the screen. Your debit card works until it doesn't. You have access to your money until someone else decides you don't. So ask yourself, if your money is always subject to permission, is it really yours? Or is it just a number in someone else's ledger, given to you under the condition that you remain within the boundaries they set?
Farmland and food. Who owns the earth? If money gives you the ability to trade, and property gives you a place to live, then farmland and food give you the ability to survive. Without them, everything else becomes meaningless. And yet, even the most basic resources of life, land and the food it produces, are caught in the same web of control as your home, your car, and your money. For most of human history, the ability to grow food meant independence. A family with fertile land could feed itself, trade its surplus, and weather hard times. But in the modern world, farmland ownership has become concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, and the rules governing it have made true independence almost impossible. In many countries, governments control large portions of agricultural land directly. Even privately owned farmland is subject to strict regulations, taxes, and in some cases, leasing terms that mean the land is never truly yours. In others, foreign corporations and investment groups have quietly bought up vast tracts of farmland, not to farm themselves, but to control the food supply and the profits it generates. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a documented trend. Around the world, agricultural land is being purchased by entities that have no connection to the local community, no interest in food security for the region, and no obligation to keep the land in active production. When profit becomes the only motive, decisions about what to grow or whether to grow anything at all are made far from the people who depend on that land for survival. Then there are the cases where farmers technically own their land, but the real power lies elsewhere. Agricultural subsidies, quotas, and trade agreements can dictate what crops are profitable to grow, sometimes forcing farmers into dependency on a single crop or a single buyer. If that buyer, often a multinational corporation, changes its terms, the farmer's livelihood can collapse overnight.
Seed control is another quiet weapon in this system. As mentioned in the previous section on intellectual property, many modern seeds are patented, meaning farmers must buy them anew each season instead of saving seeds from the previous harvest. This creates a yearly cycle of dependency, where the ability to plant next year's crop depends on paying for the right to use someone else's genetic design. Water rights add yet another layer of vulnerability. In many regions, owning farmland does not mean you own the water beneath it or flowing through it. Governments or private companies may control access to irrigation, charging fees or imposing quotas that limit how much you can grow. In times of drought, the people who control the water decide who survives. And let's not forget eminent domain. The same power that can take your home can take your farmland. In the name of development, farmland has been seized for industrial parks, mining operations, or urban expansion. The promise of fair compensation rarely accounts for the generations of work, heritage, and knowledge tied to the land. The danger of losing farmland isn't just about property, it's about food sovereignty. When control over land and seeds and water shifts from local communities to distant corporations or centralized governments, the ability to decide what you eat, how it's grown, and how much it costs slips out of your hands. And here's the final, sobering thought. You can live without a car. You can live without a phone. You can even live without money for a while. But you cannot live without food. If you don't control any part of the system that produces it, then someone else controls you at the most basic level possible. The illusion of ownership here is perhaps the most dangerous of all. You might hold a deed to farmland. You might walk across it every day and feel the soil beneath your boots. But if you're bound by rules that dictate what you can plant, how you can water it, what seeds you can use, and who you can sell to, then your independence is only an illusion. And when push comes to shove, the one who owns the land isn't the one whose name is on the paper. It's the one who can decide whether it feeds people or doesn't. The illusion of control, social contracts, and compliance. Up to this point, we've looked at how ownership is shaped and often stripped away by laws, corporations, and economic systems. But there's another layer, one that's harder to see because it lives inside our own minds, the illusion of control that comes from compliance. Most people don't lose their homes, their vehicles, their money, or their land through dramatic seizures or hostile takeovers. They keep them, on paper, because they follow the rules. They pay the taxes. They renew the licenses. They obey the zoning laws. They update the software. They accept the subscription increases. It feels like a choice. It feels like you're exercising control over what's yours. But in reality, you're not controlling the thing. You're controlling yourself to meet the conditions that someone else has set. This is the heart of the social contract. Every society has one, whether written or unwritten. You agree to follow certain rules, and in exchange, you're allowed to participate in that society, own property, operate a business, travel freely. The problem is that in the modern era, these rules are no longer just about public safety or shared order. They're increasingly about preserving control for those at the top. Consider the systems that make ownership conditional. Your house is yours as long as you pay property taxes. Your car is yours as long as you pay registration and insurance. Your phone is yours as long as you agree to the terms of service. Your money is yours as long as you use it in approved ways. What happens if you stop complying? You find out very quickly how much of that ownership was real. Skip your tax payment and your property can be taken. Refuse to update your software and you may lose access to your device. Decline to pay a subscription fee, and you lose the service you've built your work or entertainment around. The genius and the danger of this system is that it doesn't need to take things from you by force. It simply sets the rules so that you'll hand them over yourself if you don't comply. And because the rules are wrapped in the language of responsibility, safety, and progress, most people never question them. Social compliance also operates through fear. Fear of losing what you have. Fear of legal consequences. Fear of being locked out of essential systems. When you live in a world where your ability to keep your possessions depends on your good behavior stops being a moral choice. It becomes a survival tactic. This isn't to say that all rules are bad or that society can't function without them. But there's a difference between rules that protect everyone equally and rules that keep the power in the hands of a few. The more your ownership depends on satisfying conditions you didn't choose, the less that ownership is real. And the boundaries of these conditions are constantly shifting. New laws, new terms of service, new compliance requirements. Each one moves the goalposts just a little further. You don't notice at first. Then one day, you realize the rules you agreed to years ago have morphed into something entirely different, and your agreement is nothing more than silent consent to a game you no longer control. The illusion of control works because it gives you just enough freedom to feel autonomous while keeping you tethered by invisible strings. You can decorate your home, but not in violation of the HOA. You can modify your car, but not in ways that break emission standards. You can post on social media, but only within the boundaries of their community guidelines. The freedom is conditional, and conditions can change without your approval. True ownership, true control, means being able to make decisions about your property without constant permission or threat of loss. In today's world, that's rare. Instead, we're encouraged to see our compliance as proof of responsibility, when it's actually proof of dependency. The deeper you understand this, the more you see that compliance is not just about keeping your property, it's about keeping you in line. The system doesn't need to physically take away what you have if it can make you afraid to step outside the boundaries. And that's the trap. When you think you're controlling your life, when you're really just meeting the conditions to keep what you've already paid for. When the mask falls, real cases of instant loss. It's one thing to talk about ownership as an illusion in theory. It's another to watch that illusion shatter in real life. Because for most people, the truth only becomes visible in a moment of crisis, a letter in the mail, a notice taped to the door, a silent phone, a locked account. And when it happens fast. Case 1. The paid-off home that wasn't safe. Margaret and her husband had spent 30 years paying off their mortgage. They celebrated with friends, believing they were finally free from monthly payments. But a few years later, after her husband passed away, Margaret fell behind on her property taxes by less than $2,000. The county seized her home and auctioned it off for far more than she owed. The extra value? Kept by the county, legally. Overnight, the house she thought was hers became someone else's investment. Case 2. The car that disappeared without warning. James had financed his car and was making payments on time until his bank account was frozen due to a bureaucratic error linking him to someone with a similar name on a government watch list. His auto-pay failed. Within 2 weeks, a repo team arrived in the night and towed his car away. By the time he sorted out the mistake, the lender had sold the car at auction. James had done nothing wrong, yet lost the vehicle that got him to work every day. Case 3. The digital library that vanished. Lena had spent over a decade building her ebook collection, hundreds of titles purchased legally through a major online retailer. One morning, she tried to log in, only to find her account closed for terms of service violations. No explanation, no appeal process. The company didn't just suspend her account, they erased her entire library. Thousands of dollars worth of books gone with a single click, and nothing she could do about it. Case 4. The frozen bank account. In a small business in Eastern Europe, a man named Alex woke up to find his business account frozen. A government investigation had been launched into his supplier. No charges against Alex himself, but his money was considered potential evidence. For 6 months, he couldn't pay his employees or access his own funds. The investigation eventually cleared him, but by then, his business was gone. The illusion that money in the bank is safe dissolved in half a day. Case 5. The farm lost to a signature. In a rural farming community, Diego had inherited land that had been in his family for generations. One year, a foreign development company lobbied the local government to rezone the area for industrial use. The government offered market value for the land, which was far less than what Diego could earn from farming it over decades. When he refused to sell, they used eminent domain to take it anyway. His family's history, identity, and livelihood erased with the stroke of a pen. These stories are not isolated. They are the system working exactly as designed. Ownership holds until you stop meeting the conditions. And when the system decides those conditions have been broken, whether by mistake, misfortune, or deliberate change, the mask falls. What's most devastating isn't just the loss of the property, it's the shock. The realization that the sense of security you've carried for years was built on something fragile, that all along you were not the ultimate authority over what you thought was yours. And here's the chilling truth. In most of these cases, the people affected didn't even know they were vulnerable. They thought they had done everything right. They followed the rules, paid what they owed, and stayed within the lines. But the rules shifted, or the lines moved, and they found themselves outside of the protection they thought they had. When you understand this, you stop seeing these as rare tragedies. You see them as proof. Proof that the system doesn't have to take from you violently. It only has to wait until you slip, or until it decides the game has changed. And when that day comes, you will discover whether you truly owned anything at all, or whether you've just been borrowing it under someone else's terms. Psychological warfare, making you grateful for leases. Control works best when the controlled believe they're free. It works even better when they believe they're lucky to have what they do. That's the quiet genius of the modern ownership illusion. It doesn't just take away the reality of ownership, it makes you grateful for the chance to rent it back from the real owner. This is not accidental. It's a deliberate psychological strategy. Instead of making you resent your dependence, the system makes you thankful for it. Instead of making you demand ownership, it makes you feel privileged to have access on someone else's terms. Think about subscription services. You no longer buy music, you rent access to a streaming library. You no longer buy software, you rent the right to use it month to month. And because the payment is smaller and the access feels unlimited, you convince yourself you're getting a better deal. You focus on what you get, not what you've lost. You get convenience, you get variety, you get updates. You've lost permanence, you've lost control, you've lost the right to keep what you've paid for. The same trick works with housing. Renting a home used to be considered a stepping stone to ownership. Now, many people rent for life, told that it's flexible, less stressful, and freedom from maintenance. And while those things may be true in some cases, the deeper truth is this: you are being trained to see permanent dependence as a lifestyle choice rather than a limitation. This conditioning goes beyond money. It's about identity. Marketing campaigns frame leasing and renting as modern, smart, and stylish. Car companies run ads showing people switching to a new model every 2 years, as if never owning a car is a sign of success. Tech companies brag about their ecosystems that you can subscribe to, framing constant payments as the price of being part of something elite. What's really happening? You are being taught that constant payment is normal, that temporary access is better than permanent possession, that you should aspire to be a loyal customer rather than an independent owner. Fear also plays its part. The system quietly reminds you what you'd lose without compliance. Fall behind on your lease? You lose your home. Miss a payment on your subscription? You lose your tools, your entertainment, your connection to the world. The threat is subtle, but always present, like a shadow in the corner of your mind. And here's where the psychological warfare gets truly dangerous. They don't just manage your possessions, they manage your expectations. Over time, you stop expecting to own anything at all. You stop imagining what life would be like if you had unconditional control over your tools, your home, your resources. Instead, you focus on keeping up with payments, making sure the access never gets revoked. This mindset turns ownership from a right into a privilege, and privileges can be taken away. When you believe access is the best you can hope for, you stop fighting for more. The end result is people defending the very systems that keep them dependent. You'll hear renters argue that ownership is a burden. You'll hear subscription users defend rising prices because of new features. You'll hear drivers say they don't mind paying extra for features in cars they already bought because it's just how things are now. That's the mark of successful psychological conditioning, when the prisoner praises the comfort of the cell instead of longing for the key. The most dangerous thing you can lose isn't your property. It's your belief that you deserve to own it. Once that's gone, the system no longer has to take anything from you. You will happily give it up again and again and thank them for the opportunity. Who really owns you? Up until now, we've peeled back the layers of the ownership illusion. Laws that limit you, systems that control you, contracts that bind you, and a culture that trains you to accept dependence as normal. We've looked at homes, cars, money, farmland, technology, and the very food you eat. And at each step, the pattern is the same. You are allowed to own something only so long as you comply with the rules, keep up with the payments, and stay within boundaries set by others. So let's ask the question we've been circling around since the beginning. If you don't truly own the things in your life, who really owns you? The obvious answer might be the government or corporations, but the truth is more complex. Ownership, real ownership, is about control. Whoever controls the conditions of your life controls you. Whoever can take away what you depend on owns you in a very real sense. Think about it, if your home can be seized by the government, you don't control your shelter. If your money can be frozen by a bank, you don't control your resources. If your food supply depends on corporate-approved seeds, you don't control your survival. If your access to tools and information depends on a subscription, you don't control your own work. The ones who own you are the ones who can say no to you and make that no stick. Control today is rarely exercised through chains or whips. It's exercised through systems that make you believe you are free while keeping you inside invisible walls. The government writes the laws. Corporations write the terms of service. Financial institutions write the contracts. And all of them write the rules for what you can keep, use, or access. They own the infrastructure. They own the supply chains. They own the platforms. And as long as your life runs through those things, they own the terms under which you live it. But here's the uncomfortable part. it's not just them. We also hand over ownership of ourselves every time we choose convenience over autonomy, comfort over independence, and compliance over resistance. We make their job easy when we internalize their rules as our own. A person who depends on a paycheck they can't afford to lose will obey their employer without question. A person who depends on a subscription for their work tools will accept price hikes without protest. A person who fears losing their home will avoid any action that might draw official scrutiny, even if it means staying silent in the face of injustice. When the things you rely on to live are controlled by someone else, your freedom is an illusion. You may move through your life making choices, but the menu of those choices has been curated for you. You may feel like you're steering the wheel, but the road has already been mapped. So who really owns you? The answer is whoever you can't say no to without risking everything you have. And that should terrify you, because if there is someone, some entity, some system in your life that fits that description, then they own you more than you own anything. This is not a call to paranoia, it's a call to awareness, because the moment you see the strings, you can start cutting them. The moment you understand the trade-offs you've been making, you can decide whether they're worth it. But you can't take back ownership until you admit how much you've already given away. And that starts by facing the hardest truth of all. You've been living as if you own your life, when in reality, your life has been rented to you month by month, term by term, condition by condition. The question now is, are you willing to pay that rent forever? Or are you ready to take it back?
Breaking the chains, taking back real ownership. By now, the illusion has been exposed. You've seen how laws, corporations, financial systems, and cultural conditioning create a reality where you own nothing in the absolute sense. You've seen how the rules can change, the permissions can vanish, and the things you depend on can be taken away overnight. It's a sobering realization, but it's also a turning point, because now you can decide, will you accept this arrangement as permanent, or will you start reclaiming what's yours? Step 1. Own what you can hold. If you can't touch it, store it, or move it without permission, you don't fully own it. That means your first step is to prioritize assets you can physically possess and secure. Real tools, physical books, cash in hand, hard drives with your own backups, these are less vulnerable to the flick of a digital switch. You may not be able to escape the system entirely, but you can reduce your reliance on assets that only exist inside it. Step 2. Diversify your holdings. If all your money is in one bank, that bank owns your access. If all your food comes from one source, that source owns your survival. Spread your risk. Use multiple accounts in different institutions. Support local producers. Build relationships with independent suppliers. A system can't control you as easily if it doesn't control all your lifelines. Step 3. Build skills, not just possessions. Possessions can be seized. Skills cannot. The ability to grow food, repair machines, fix electronics, or build from scratch gives you leverage the system can't take away. If you can meet your own needs, you reduce the power others have over you. True ownership includes owning the means to create, not just the creations themselves. Step 4. Reduce your permanent dependencies. Every recurring payment, every subscription, every lease is a chain. Some may be necessary, but many are not. Ask yourself, can I replace this service with something I control? Can I buy it outright? Can I do without it? The fewer dependencies you have, the less control others have over you. Step 5. Secure your essentials outside the system. Have some food stored that doesn't rely on a supply chain. Have water purification options that don't depend on municipal systems.
Keep at least a portion of your wealth in forms that don't require third-party permission to use. These aren't signs of paranoia, they're acts of independence. Step 6. Learn the rules so you can bend them. Many people are trapped not because the rules are unbeatable, but because they don't even know what they are. Study property laws, financial regulations, intellectual property rights. Understand how the game is played so you can navigate it strategically. The system counts on your ignorance. Step 7. Build networks of mutual support. An individual can be isolated and pressured into compliance. A community can resist. Form connections with people who value independence, who can trade skills, resources, and protection. In a world of controlled access, shared ownership among trusted allies can be a powerful shield. Step 8. Shift your mindset. The hardest chain to break is in your head. The system works because you believe it's the only way. But ownership doesn't have to mean paperwork and legal recognition. It can mean practical control. It can mean having the knowledge, the means, and the ability to keep something safe and use it freely, regardless of the official record. When you start valuing control over comfort, you stop playing the game on their terms. Real ownership is not given, it's taken. It's taken through preparation, through vigilance, through refusing to depend entirely on anyone or anything you can't trust. It's taken by understanding that freedom is not the absence of rules, it's the ability to choose which rules you live by. You won't be able to change everything overnight, but every step you take towards reclaiming control over your assets, your skills, your dependencies, your mindset, is a step away from the illusion and toward reality. The truth is, you may never own everything in your life absolutely, but you can own enough. Enough to live on your terms, enough to resist being coerced, enough to know that if the system turns against you, you will not collapse. Because when you own your shelter, your tools, your food, your skills, and your choices, no one truly owns you.